been a lot more successful as of late. I don't think that they're necessarily pushing as hard to lock these guys down whenever they're in Tallahassee. They want them to go through the process, make the decision, and commit to Florida State. And I think that's going to pay off in July at least 5 times.
5 times.
At least 5.
Oh, at least.
Maybe
Okay. More. Oh, keeping us on our toes over here. Let's do it. Sign me up. Let's go.
Hey guys, it's Terrence Nan. You're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. Go Dogs.
Hey, what's up? This is Peter Ward, a.k.a. P-Dub, in the house. So we're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. Go Live, go Noel.
Hi, this is Charlie Ward, and you're listening to Hear the Spear, Go Noel.
This is Terrell Buckley. You're listening to Hear the Spear, presented by Noel Game Day. No Bloody.
But perhaps better known as the greatest corner to ever step on a football field, Deion Primetime Sanders.
Great Deion Sanders, my brother. What's going on, man? I could wake up to that greeting every day, man. That was awesome.
Hello, Noles fans. This is former Seminole Derek Brooks, and you're listening to Hear the Spear, presented to you by Noel Game Day.
James Wilder Jr. What's going on, James?
Thanks for having me on. FSOD, Florida State or Die, and go Noles.
William Bar None Floyd.
Gentlemen, what's up?
What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Hear the Spear, presented to you by NoelGameDay.com. We are here live on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday evening. Feels good to be back. Another break. Wasn't planned or timed to be that way, but ended up happening. Tonsillitis sucks. No fun whatsoever. Used to get it when I was little, but I guess it came back and grabbed me this last week. But feeling better, feeling good, up for it. Always good to be back onto the show with the guys. Up ahead of me is Austin Veazey, our lead basketball writer at NoelGameDay.com, and down below is our editor-in-chief and recruiting guru. Need to add that on now that we're in June and July, going into July. Dustin Lewis, gentlemen, good to see you. We're back, baby.
Yeah, good to be back. Like you said, it wasn't really a planned break, and now there's a lot on the docket tonight. And as for the guru part, I would just leave that off. Let's just stick with editor-in-chief.
Well, there will be a lot of recruiting talk tonight, and it will be led by you, Dustin. But we'll give our 2 cents here and there. But a lot of visitors coming into Tallahassee. Well, Veazey's actually going to give us
don't
put
words in my mouth, please.
No recruiting predictions from you?
Probably not.
Come on, man. That's what everybody's looking for here on the show, is to give us some recruiting predictions from your side.
No.
Not happening. Well, that's fine. We have a lot of recruiting to go over nonetheless. A big-time official visit weekend with 14 recruits coming in town, multiple commits and classes. But we also heard from Jordan Travis and Trey Benson earlier this morning. We're going to talk about Luke being at the Elite 11, Florida State's 2024 quarterback commit. We're going to talk some Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 wide receiver, Ohio State current commit, who just recently last weekend visited Florida State. We didn't get to touch on that because we didn't have a show last week. So we're just going to give our 2 cents on that visit and what it means, along with Charles Lester. He just took his 9th trip to Florida State. Is that within a month, Dustin?
No, just like throughout the course of his recruitment.
I was like, oh my God. I don't know how that would even be possible, but Charles Lester, though, I mean, this dude loves Tallahassee, so it wouldn't be any shocker. But he also is scheduling his commitment on July 29th, so we'll go into a discussion on the show tonight about that. We're going to talk some KJ Bolden. It's the 2024 number 1 safety in the class. He actually spent a couple of days in Tallahassee as well, so we'll discuss that. And then we're going to talk Dalvin Cook. The Dolphins reportedly made an offer over to him. And we're going to talk a little bit of basketball at the end. So a lot of things to jump through. We need to get started. But before we get going, make sure you hit the like button if you're on YouTube right now. It helps go to other FSU fans on the platform. If you're on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, make sure you hit subscribe on there. So then you will get notified every time we release a new episode. Got a lot to chat about. Let's get into some stuff, guys. Trey Benson, Jordan Travis, got to hear from them. a scheduled press conference to talk about summer workouts. Also, Jordan Travis being and attending at the Manning Passing Academy. Did not participate, but he was there indeed. I saw him signing a lot of autographs, being with some fans, and also chopping it up with some of the other really talented quarterbacks. Pretty good time there, but really specifically talking about workouts and what this team is doing during the off season. Trey Benson talking about working on his body. He said, I asked him, we saw him during the spring, Dustin, and that boy put on some pounds. I mean, you could see a significant jump in his size. And so that's why I wanted to ask him, was he planning on trimming off some of that? And yes, he is. He's going to go from 226 down to 220. He feels like he wants to keep his speed and utilize that. And the only way to do that is to trim off a little bit of that weight. But, what were your thoughts about the interviews today, Dustin? I know you and I and Tommy were listening in and covering it. Any key kind of takeaways from your end?
I would just say maybe something that stood out is as far as Trey Benson, talking about him, he mentioned that he's 100% recovered from that knee injury that he suffered back during his time at Oregon that, possibly could have ended his career. And I mean, we even saw whenever he transferred to Florida State last year, at times he was limited throughout practices and things. But I mean, it sounds like he's completely over that, and that allowed him to do really a full off-season program for, I mean, if you think about it, I believe the first time that he's really been in college. And you mentioned that weight gain. That's probably a big reason why he's jumped up to that 226, being able to be in the weight room and doing all that conditioning standard with FSU. And
legs, man, getting those legs, that's where you gain that weight, doing those squats.
But I think, that's just going to be huge in his development, not having to worry about an injury, getting over hurdles of rehab and things like that. Instead, he's just in the football activities, doing conditioning with the team, and just continuing to progress. And we even heard him talk about the offensive line a little bit, and he said with the amount of experience coming back, he feels like he's not going to be 10 yards short of that 1,000 yard mark this year. So we'll see if that happens.
There was a couple things that stood out to me from J. Trav and Trey Benson, but sticking on Benson, just seeing his facial expressions after talking about Dustin Hill, Jordan Travis talking very highly about him, saying that he's a really, really special player. And we've heard some really good things about him during these summer workouts and coming here prepared, coming in shape, and, already trying to start to build some chemistry with the wide receivers. J. Trav opened up and told us, they do have their closed in workouts and they're not really practices, but they're running routes and they're passing. At this time, coaches can't get involved and make a whole play sheet. Here's what you're doing. But nonetheless, Jordan Travis is a guy that's a leader now, and he's turned into having to facilitate kind of these organized workouts and practices almost, to where he's trying to build chemistry with Keon Coleman now, Dustin Hill, and a lot of the other newcomers that are in the stable now. But just the comments about Dustin Hill and, how impressive he's been to these two leaders on offense really stood out to me.
Yeah, and you mentioned Keon Coleman. He had a lot of praise for him as well, the Michigan State wide receiver transfer. Him and Dustin both really still getting acclimated to their times at Florida State, but it sounds like out there in some of these early practices that are run by the players, they've really been standing out. And like you said, Logan, sounds like Dustin Hill has come in tremendous shape, and Keon Coleman, one of the top-rated players in the transfer portal in this spring cycle. And probably for the entire thing dating back to the winter, maybe the best wide receiver that hit the transfer portal market this kind of cycle. He's been, as advertised, a really special guy out there, and is going to bring an instant impact to Florida State's wide receiver room in a big way.
Trey Benson also talking about Florida State's season opener, which is, now to think of, it's not too crazy long. We're about to head into July. Time is going to start. It's already just blowing by, but we're getting close now to Florida State's 2023 season kickoff against LSU, which is expected to be a top 10 matchup. And Trey Benson was specifically asked about this and kind of just the mindset going into a game like this. They already faced LSU, but these two teams were not ranked last year, which is crazy, to think of now going into this season where this is a literal top 10 matchup, and it changes a lot for the mindset for Florida State. And he was talking about, he said, like I said, taking it day by day, blocking out all the noise. Two teams in the top 10. Hey, it's going to be a showdown, but taking it day by day, each game by each game, and we're just ready to go. And so, that's just kind of how this whole team's, theme is going through this off season, blocking out everything. And this is this program, it's going to be something new for them. Definitely whenever you're getting this kind of praise, you're getting all these accolades before the season even begins, is something that Florida State hasn't had in a little while. But, they've always had primetime, opportunities and games and such, but for it to be now where they're ranked and now they're trying to make it to, a college football playoff, it's a little bit different with your mindset. And it's going to be really interesting to watch how this fall camp goes on with, leaders and guys that can block out the noise like this. It's going to be a learning curve for them.
Agreed.
We've talked before how the expectations surrounding this team are going to be the biggest factor of how they go through summer and fall and into the games. If they can do like Trey Benson says and block out all this outside noise, it's only going to help them. But a lot of these guys have never had to deal with these kind of expectations before.
Yep. And I think, that's exactly what this team has to do. Don't think about all the expectations that are being put on the table by the media. Just go out, take it day by day, game by game, like Trey Benson said. And I mean, Jordan Travis said the same thing at another point in the interview. They're just focused on, he's like, we got to work out today. We're focused on that. We got to work out tomorrow. We're focused on that. And then into fall camp. So, I mean, they're just really going day by day. And I think that's really important because like you guys have said, they haven't had this kind of success. They haven't come off a 10-win season or a season where, I mean, they've really even had a positive record over the last couple of years. It's important not to get caught up in your own hype and just come out there and prove it. And especially when you're not going to have the courtesy of a tune-up game this season before you play LSU instead. I mean, both teams are just kind of going to be thrown into the fire, and you're going to have to come out early in September and in Orlando and, I mean, throw the first punch.
Another thing, this is good comment here from James on YouTube talking about Jordan Travis and, the weight that he's at. He told us that he's at 212. He plans on maintaining and keeping that weight throughout the season. It's always tough in fall camp. We're going to see some guys trim off some weight nonetheless, but J Trav specifically wants to stay at that weight. Do y'all feel like that's a pretty good weight to be at? I mean, some people want him to get to like 220, 225, but you've also got to understand, man, the best talent, the rich talent that you get from Jordan Travis is those legs down there. I don't want to see him just like, Trey Benson, he's going to shave off 6 pounds before the season. That's his plan. I don't need to see J Trav at 215, 220. That's a guy that knows how to utilize his body well, his balance. He's one of the most athletic players we see in college football right now. I don't need him putting on any kind of crazy pounds, but I think 212 is pretty safe. The biggest thing I think for me is just playing at a safe weight. Add a little muscle. So then, you get knocked a little bit here and there. You can get up and, lick your wounds and you're good to go. But I think 212 is pretty fun.
Pretty much agree with your take there. And I mean, everyone knows muscle weighs more than fat. And, even if J Trav isn't sitting up there at 220 pounds, he's definitely put on a significant amount of muscle over the past couple of years compared to when he first took the reins under Mike Norvell back in 2020. I mean, you can see the guy's body has grown tremendously over the past couple of years, especially his lower body. He's put on some serious size down there. So, I mean, and I think, when you look at his body type as well, where he's at fits him extremely well. And even better, he's become smarter as the years have gone by at avoiding hits, taking big hits. I think you're going to see him put a bigger emphasis on that in 2023 as well.
Yeah, he was about 185, 190 as a recruit, came to Florida State from Louisville at about 200, 202, somewhere on there. So I think 212 is a pretty safe weight for him.
Yeah, agreed. I think that'll be just fine. I think just over the theme of the press conference, guys, just get into work. We see a few videos and photos here and there from the FSU official accounts, and you're seeing some guys out there grinding and whatnot, but it's kind of been little quiet almost. I think Winston Wright, he put out a video on his Instagram story, and of course it got deleted. I was going to go post it earlier to try to get my clout up, but yeah, he deleted it, but it showed that he was looking pretty good, man. I don't know if y'all saw that video, but Winston was moving probably the best I've seen him move. Dustin, you and I have seen him quite a bit, and it's always felt like, it's almost there. It's almost clicking, but I swear that did look pretty good. At least, we only get to see the best of what he's showing us, and it's one route. So not going to be like, oh my God, Winston's back. Watch out. Wide receiver 3, watch out. But it is good to see him. The biggest thing for me was always, I just want to see him look 100% and, be able to take on full contact and such. And if there's a way that he's making that next step, man, I mean, we keep on forgetting about that. Winston Wright is still on this roster who played a pivotal role in being a deep threat and being an elusive player at West Virginia. He's still on this roster. Just, can he be good to go? But I thought it was worth mentioning earlier today. I saw a lot of people talking about it in the Discord and on Twitter.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, he still looked like he had a ways to go back in spring camp. At the same time, I think Florida State was still limiting him a little bit and just trying to keep him protected, slowly building up the confidence in that leg, because there was no point in having him go all out in spring ball and risking him getting hurt. But now, as we go into the fall and we're talking about Winston Wright's last season of collegiate eligibility, this is the last chance for him. This is the last chance for Florida State to utilize him in Tallahassee. So I think you're going to see him come out with a renewed focus, a renewed purpose during fall camp to really show that he's back from that injury that he suffered, going on 18 months or so at this point, something in that time range, that he can get back out there and make an impact for FSU in the slot. And I think it's really going to be important for him, once the pads come on in fall camp, take some hits, go to the ground, pop right back up, because I don't want to say he looked timid during the spring, but it just seemed like maybe he was thinking about getting hit still a little bit. You want to see him shake that off a little bit.
100%. Yeah. And, we would both be the same way, after going through a tragic accident like that, an incident, recovering, like that's just going to come with it. Any guy, you can listen to any running back torn your ACL, wide receiver, it's going to take a couple pops, and that's just exactly what it's going to have to take during the fall camp if we're going to see him participate in this 2023 season. So we'll see. Jordan Travis has talent everywhere, but then we kind of forget Winston Wright is still on this roster, which is just crazy. It just fathoms me that, this is how much talent that Mike Norvell has been able to bring into this room. Shout out to Ron Dugans, the Donk as well. But let's jump into some official visit stuff. D-Lou, a big-time weekend of a lot of recruits in town, including commits, your bell cow with Luke Kromenhoek being in attendance, along with some other guys like Camden Fryer. You had Cam Davis as well. I mean, it just kept on going and going and going, along with some major targets too, D-Lou. You just tell me the theme of the day, and then we'll kind of start jumping through a few names. Was it raining? Was it hot? What were the vibes like? Did you need sunscreen?
Oh, I always need sunscreen. It doesn't matter if it's overcast outside. I tried that in February and got sunburnt. But
Irishman,
I mean, man, so many guys on campus this weekend. I guess we can start off. We can just go by all the names and just name everyone that was there. But 14 official visitors, the biggest recruiting weekend for Mike Norvell so far since he has arrived in Tallahassee. So, yeah, just to name off all 14 guys: 4-star quarterback commit Luke Kromenhoek, 4-star running back Makai Danzy, 4-star wide receiver commit Camden Fryer, 4-star wide receiver commit TJ Abrams, 4-star wide receiver Elijah Moore, 4-star wide receiver James Madison, 4-star wide receiver Zion Reagans, you sensing a theme here, 5-star tight end commit Landon Thomas, 4-star tight end Kylan Fox, 4-star offensive lineman John Daniels, 3-star offensive lineman Ty Hilton, 4-star defensive end Dede Holmes, 4-star defensive back Jalewis Solomon, and 4-star defensive back commit CJ Hurd. So that was a lot of words by itself, but I mean, just a huge amount of guys coming in for Florida State. 5 commitments, 9 targets. I think really the theme of this weekend was trying to make some moves towards landing some of these top guys, as well as, when you look at the committed list, TJ Abrams, a guy who pledged to Florida State back in January. This official visit was his first time in Tallahassee since making his commitment. So, I mean, one thing they wanted to do is try and lock him down a little bit. It sounded like the visit went pretty well. He also visited Florida and Texas A&M during June. So, I mean, a guy who's still exploring his options despite his commitment. And it sounds like based off what he said after the visit, he's going to continue, maybe take some more visits during the fall. Not exactly locked down with FSU quite yet. But as far as the rest of the commitments, I mean, Luke Kromenhoek feeling extremely good coming out of his visit. I think Florida State has some good news coming up. Camden Fryer seems like he's pretty locked in with FSU, the legacy, whose dad was a member of the 1993 national championships team. His uncle was a member of the 1999 national championship team. And Fryer trying to follow in those footsteps a little bit. Landon Thomas, same thing. A guy coming to Tallahassee pretty much has his recruitment shut down at this point. That was something he said after the visit. He's unofficially shut down his recruitment, so maybe trending to officially do it here in the near future or so. And then also CJ Hurd, a guy who's been committed to FSU for over a year at this point and is pretty solid in his pledge. I think as long as Florida State wants to keep him in the boat, they're going to be able to. But I mean, man, where do you want to go with this?
I don't know. I think the new thing, the new age of recruiting is first you get recruited, then you're like a silent, then you commit to the school. And then now the new thing is going to be, I'm locking down my recruitment. That's now going to be the biggest thing. Like you're just saying there with Landon, like I still think he's definitely really solid with Florida State's recruitment, but I think that's just how it's going to go the next couple of years. I can already taste it. It's just how it should. I mean, why not? Just lead us on a little bit longer. Definitely Florida State fans will fiend for any of it. But let's start off with some of the target. I think people on here on YouTube and our listeners on the podcast audio version, they want to hear kind of these targets that Florida State's in a good spot for. I think we should discuss some of these guys because there's some really good talent right here.
For sure. Yeah, and to your point on Landon, maybe the next step being locking it down. We saw the same thing with Luke and Cam back towards the spring showcase. They both put out the graphics and, shutting down their recruitments 100% in with FSU. So, I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe that's the new hotness nowadays. But, guys coming out of the weekend that I think Florida State sits in a good position for. Got to start off with 4-star running back Mekhi Danzy from right across the street, basically down over there at Florida High, about 20 minutes away from campus or so. And, I mean, this month he only took an official visit to Florida State. No other programs. Is going to visit Miami and Florida in December, but he wants to make a commitment this summer, and sounds like track is very important along with football. Florida State is recruiting him to play both in college. So, I mean, if he does commit to FSU, you'll have another dual sport athlete in the class, and that adds on with Cam Davis and Camden and TJ Abrams as well if he sticks. So a lot of dual sport guys coming in, but
I was gonna mention just he's a different type of caliber running back than Cam Davis too. You add a little bit more of maybe elusiveness, I would say. Just watching a little bit of his tape. I was watching it earlier this week just because I had nothing else to friggin' do. So I was seeing some of the guys coming in, but just looking at what you could do in this offense with having a Cam Davis. You already know the talent that he brings and the magnitude there, but his talent of being able to kind of move around is something that Florida State would probably really like to utilize.
Yeah, and Florida State, they're kind of comparing him to Lawrence Toafili at the next level.
I was going to say Lawrence, man.
I mean, I kind of agree with it. A guy who can flex out of that backfield into the slot, can work as a receiver a little bit. And, we're talking about a long strider, someone who likes to go sideline to sideline. And maybe the most impressive thing is his speed. Well, it is the most impressive thing. This guy is the second fastest 200-meter dash runner in the world for the under 18 age group. So, I mean, if Florida State's able to land him, you're feeling good on the football field and on the track.
God, we love fast players. If you guys, there's a lot of people that listen to the podcast. We talk about a lot of track guys, and we've had Marvin Bracey on here before. But when you bring some elite speed, definitely to an offense like Norvell's, where they utilize explosive plays and taking care of their playmakers, it kind of just makes sense. But I'm just, interested to see if that can match up really well with Cam Davis. But I like the kind of relation there to Philly. That was what I was thinking as well. And I guess that's what Mike Norvell likes having in his roster. That's what he likes having back there in his stable.
Got to have a gadget player in that backfield.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess next we can go to the trio of 4-star wide receivers, uncommitted wide receivers that joined the duo of committed wide receivers. I mean, just an absurd amount of wide receivers in Tallahassee this past weekend. So we'll start with Elijah Moore. I didn't really know a lot about him coming into the weekend. He had previously been to Florida State one time and, took an OV to Ohio State earlier this month. But after the visit, it sounds like things went really well. He clicked with Mike Norvell and Ron Dugans coming out of the trip, named Florida State his leader over Ohio State, and is set to announce his commitment on June 4th between FSU and OSU. And, he was asked a little bit about the decision. He said he pretty much already has his mind made up and just has to make a couple of business calls. So we'll see how this one goes. But, I mean, from what I've heard from the FSU side, they feel like they're in a very good spot here. And if I had to make a prediction right now, I think Florida State is going to pull Elijah Moore on July 4th. So some fireworks coming to Tallahassee.
He looked impressive just in size and frame too. I know we were talking about it, I think in the Discord or something, but he looks really good for size wise. And just his comments alone, if you're there on campus and you're having that comment of, I think I've already got my mind made up and I just got to make a few business calls, then I feel like that's probably the school that you'll end up picking. But yeah, that kid is talented. And I don't think a lot of FSU fans were really keeping an eye on him before he arrived.
I really liked him. Probably had the most impressive frame out of any wide receiver out there. And, when you look at the FSU, obviously has 4 wide receivers already committed in this class, but he's a much different player. The other guys are smaller, speedier. Some can play in the slot. This is a guy who's going to be an outside wide receiver, a deep threat, a potential red zone monster if he reaches his potential. Elijah Moore could be a good one for Florida State. And then we'll move over to James Madison, another guy who's at that 6'3", 6'4" mark, who could be utilized in the red zone a ton and plays over at St. Thomas Aquinas. But Madison has been to Florida State a bunch of times. It seems like the Seminoles have always kind of been trending in this recruitment and, got to feel pretty good after getting the last visit. As far as him, he's another one who's trending to a July 4th decision. That one's going to come down to FSU, Missouri, and Louisville, the 3 teams that he officially visited in June. And I feel like if Florida State wants him, then he's going to end up as a Seminole. But if not, then he'll probably go to Missouri. I noticed a couple of his St. Thomas Aquinas teammates have committed to Missouri as well. So, I mean, I think this just comes down to, does Florida State want to add if they get Elijah Moore, do they want to add a 6 wide receiver commitment in early July? And that's just a conversation that you've got to figure out, because you've still got JoJo Trader on the board. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith, we're going to get to here in a little bit. So do you want to go ahead and take a 6 wide receiver, or do you want to wait it out?
I just think it's interesting now where Florida State's at a position to do this. I mean, we used to come on here a ton and complain and wonder what's going on in the wide receiver room. Okay, cool, we got some transfers. But now on the recruiting side of things, it's looked a lot more sharp. But shout out to the staff and what Dugans is doing as well. It's a good spot to be in. But, I mean, it makes for some tough decisions for sure. But this is exactly where you do want to be, though, as a program for sure.
We'll close out the wide receivers with Zion Reagans, which first trip to Florida State in well over a year. This was his official visit. This one seems like it's coming down to FSU, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. And he hasn't announced an official date yet, but said he's trending towards a decision in July. And I mean, just based off his comments, I don't think that he's necessarily favoring Florida State at this time. We'll see how things go moving forward. And he's also someone who's about 5'8". So, I mean, he doesn't really do a lot much different than what Florida State already has committed. I would say maybe if a guy like TJ Abrams does decommit and go somewhere else, or, even Loane McCoy, who hasn't seen the most solid in his pledge as of late. If you lose one of those guys, maybe you turn up the heat on Reagans. But, I mean, right now he just doesn't do, at least in my opinion, he doesn't do a ton different than what you already have.
True. That's a busy weekend overall, and I think too with having
not even close
Davis.
To done.
I know. Well, with having Davis, and what I'm saying is Luke being there and helping recruit, and then Cam Davis, those two locking down their commitments, and I think Landon Thomas too, maybe internally as well. That kind of stuff picking up steam, and maybe there's some other ones out there that are helping out, doing some recruiting that we don't even maybe know of. That's maybe on Florida State's side that could be helping out in different ways, but it just goes to show what this 2024 class has a potential to be if they can put out a good product this upcoming season. But what else went down throughout this whole entire weekend?
So, yeah, we'll move on to 4-star tight end Kylan Fox and Florida State. They've kind of perused adding a second tight end to this class. Not really sure if it's something they want to do or not, considering you do have the number 1 tight end in the country, Landon Thomas, committed. And you've got some young talent in your tight end room at the moment where if you add another freshman, doesn't make a lot of sense when there are maybe some other positions in the class that you could address moving forward. I would say Florida State was probably the perceived favorite for Fox coming into the weekend. And then basically like less than an hour after he departed campus on Sunday, you had On3 put in a prediction for Kylan Fox to end up at UCF. And it seems like from the FSU side, that's maybe starting to become the expectation. Not sure the visit necessarily went as Florida State wanted here, but at the same time, I don't think FSU's really kicking itself because it gives you a spot. If Kylan Fox does commit to UCF, it gives you a spot to put somewhere else on offense or on defense as well.
Yeah, I mean, not going to complain too much when you have the number one tight end already in your class, and it makes sense for him. If you want to get a better opportunity somewhere else and you're going to get that full playing time, go for it. I don't think this should be something that FSU fans will be, oh my God, we're screwed. And that's definitely not the case whatsoever. And also what you got kind of cultivating right now in your current roster at the tight end position. So let him, find a place that can better utilize him for better and more playing time. That's completely fine. It's just more of, I think Landon Thomas has a good friendship with him. So, just trying to tangle him in and stuff. But, I think I'm all for a player doing what he thinks is best for him. So we'll see what ends up happening there.
I think they were exploring to see if it was the right option, but he also knows if he picks UCF, he's going to be the number one tight end in their 2024 class 100%. And maybe have an opportunity to play earlier at the college level. You think about Florida State, Marquise and Douglas expected to come back next season. You've still got Brian Courtney and Jarrell Powers. I'm not really sure about the eligibility situation with Preston. I'll have to check on that. And Jackson West still there. Kyle Morlock is probably a guy that's going to come back for a second year of eligibility. Jaheim Bell, I think most of us would think right now he's going to make the leap to the NFL after the 2023 season. But, I mean, and then you add Landon Thomas in. So, I mean, you're still thinking at least 6 scholarship guys in that room for 2024.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely highlighted Marquise and Douglas, Jarrell Powers. Hopefully we see the next step being taken by him, getting some PT this upcoming season as well. That tight end room is nice. It's nice to talk about. Never used to be that way.
All right, we've only got 4 more to go. Let's go down to the offensive line now. Florida State hasn't gone the way they expected it to go in June to this point. FSU's number one interior option, Jason Zandamela, ended up committing to USC after his official visit there earlier in June. You also had one of their top offensive tackle targets, a guy who was on campus in the spring, Manassi Ititi, commit to USC as well following an official visit. So, I mean, you had 2 of the top offensive linemen go off the board. They were both scheduled to be here in this last weekend of June, but after those commitments, decided not to take the visits. We'll see if Florida State, I think they're going to stay involved on Zandamela and maybe try to get an official in the fall. But as for this weekend, you had 2 guys come in on the offensive line. That was 4-star offensive lineman John Daniels and 3-star Ty Hilton. For me, I think coming out of the weekend, Florida State, probably the favorite right now for John Daniels. He hasn't announced a commitment date just yet, but I mean, we did see him tweeting at Hayes Fawcett during the visit, trying to get a graphic made. Don't know if that's necessarily for a top schools list or a commitment at this time, but regardless, it sounds like he's getting closer to wrapping up the process and has a really good relationship with Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell. Was with Luke Kromenhoek a ton during the trip, and we even saw them pull up together in the same car and Mike Norvell's Maybach during the second day of the visits. I mean, Kromenhoek really throwing the hat into the ring there to try and get FSU's first offensive line commitment of the class. We'll see. This guy is really coveted by a lot of programs across the country, but I think Florida State, they've got a close place to his heart. And if I had to pick right now, I think they're going to win out in the recruitment. And then you go to Ty Hilton. Really seems like this one is a FSU, Florida, Miami battle. FSU got the last visit. He's another one that wants to commit this summer, if so. And I think he's got the green light from Florida State since they brought him in on official. If he wants to commit, I think that he also would commit to the Seminoles at this point in time. And I mean, those would be two nice little pieces to kind of get the class started. And we'll see if FSU is able to get back in on Zandamela, who, I mean, is one of the most impressive offensive linemen in this entire class.
Offensive line, baby. Give me them all. Coach Atkins, while you have him here, trying to stock up and bring in some talent. Florida State continues to do a good job on that front, but it's nice to see the recruiting continue over there, which is already, whenever you go to practices, D-Lou, it's like a whole friggin' army over there of guys. But you got to keep reloading, man, and also continuing to develop what you have inside. And then you also bring in these transfers. They've got something cooking there for the offensive line. So I think players, recruits, these high-profile targets in that position group is eyeing down what Coach Atkins is doing. It's hard to really ignore it at this point.
Seminoles also had one defensive lineman in Tallahassee this past week, and that was 4-star defensive end D.D. Holmes from up in Maryland. And this was, I believe, his second time checking out Tallahassee since the spring. Spent a lot of time around Mike Norvell, Adam Fuller, Coach JP, and, really just building relationships along with his family to see if maybe coming this far from home would be something that's good for him. And I mean, I got to say, kids looks really impressive for a guy entering his senior season of high school, about 6'6", 240 pounds, give or take. I mean, already looking really like a college edge rusher. Based off his comments, he departed pretty early on Sunday morning, but also officially visited Rutgers, South Carolina, and home state Maryland during the recruiting process in June. Florida State got the last visit here. Another one who hasn't set a clear announcement date, but is thinking about committing sometime this summer, or might take it a little bit into his senior season. Based off the competition, I'll say it again, Rutgers, South Carolina, and Maryland, and Florida State not having any defensive end commitments at this time. Dylan Stevenson committed to Stanford earlier this month, and I think there was at least one more that went elsewhere. In Florida State not really having a ton of traction with top defensive linemen across the country as we sit right here at the end of June. I think they really need to throw as many resources as they can into this commitment and get D.D. Holmes. Sounded like the visit went extremely well. I was actually watching a little bit of his Instagram live on I think it was Friday night or Saturday night, and I'm pretty sure I heard his mom say during the IG live, Florida State looks like home, or some kind of iteration such as that. But by all accounts, it went well for D.D., went well for the family. We'll see if Florida State can win out here.
Yeah, there's a couple comments in here from our listeners talking about, defensive line recruiting, and that's something that we talked about a couple months ago. That's something that has got to be worked on and got to be better. Got to bring in just bring some depth in, but some talent would also be nice. But you can't fully rely on the transfer portal every year. I know we keep saying that, and Norvell continues to always have backup plan B, C, D, and E. But still, you want to also bring in your guys that you can develop there. But right now, you've got Tafase, who is one that I think we are pretty high on. Still got a lot of more work to do to develop wise. You lost Bishop Thomas to the transfer portal. We really, really like what we've seen from Daniel Lyons, and he continues to make steps and strides, and he's going to be a player that's going to be utilized quite a bit this upcoming season. Whenever your top guys are down and need some rest, Daniel Lyons will be in the game. But still, you've got to bring in some more guys in this upcoming class. And I'm interested to see what Odell Higgins and Adam Fuller, what they're going to be able to do with this upcoming class. There's got to be some depth built.
We're going to see how it goes. They got a long way to go. I'll say that. Some guys on the board, but I mean, just not a ton of traction at this time. I think Dylan Stevenson, I mean, kind of like Zandamela, I think you can get back on him during the season. You got to think going out to Stanford for that official visit, and with everything that the university has to offer, not only athletically, but also academically, I mean, it's kind of hard to pass that up. But I mean, maybe as time goes on and the visit high kind of wanes off, and we are talking about a kid from, South Florida who's right now committed to play his future all the way across the country in California. I think that's something that Florida State can kind of pick at a little bit in the fall and try to push to keep him home, because this was a guy who grew up an FSU fan. And I mean, FSU was the favorite basically since the beginning of the year, but lost out on this one.
Another guy that whenever y'all posted some photos of him, looks good in size. That's another dude that just looks the part for sure. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Anything to conclude on? Anything left in there that you can give us?
Last one, we'll talk about 4-star DB Jalewis Solomon, FSU, getting the final official visit here before his decision. Once again, hasn't announced a for sure date for a commitment, but actually just put out a top 5 yesterday. Florida State made the cut along with Auburn, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Texas A&M. Right now, I think this is more of a 3-team race between FSU, South Carolina, and Auburn. FSU and South Carolina are both recruiting Jalewis as a defensive back at the next level, while Auburn is looking at him more as a offensive player, athlete, wide receiver type of deal. Based off his comments following his official visit to Florida State, he said FSU is in the lead right now coming out of June. Sounds like he's all about playing on the defensive side during his college career. Also mentioned that Florida State has plans to get the ball in his hands as a returner on special teams, potentially at some point during his career if he does choose FSU. So, we'll see how this goes. I think Florida State, they're in a good position here. He said that they're looking at him more as a cornerback that can also play in the nickel. And, I think it really just comes down to, and it's the same thing as the wide receivers, do you want to take this many cornerbacks in the summer? Because Florida State, we're going to get to it, but in a good spot for Charles Lester. You've got Ricky Knight committing on July 4th, a 4-star cornerback who officially visited earlier this month. It's between FSU and Miami there. And you've got 3-star cornerback Kevin Levy, who was at FSU earlier this month, and seems like it's between Illinois and Rutgers there at this point. But Levy and Knight are actually both cousins, and during all of their trips except for one, they've both been there at the same time to Florida State, and they didn't flat out say they want to play together at the college level, but I've got a feeling that's kind of the preference. So if you have Charles Lester, Ricky Knight, and Levy in the boat, do you want to pull in Jalewis as well? If you're asking me, I'm going to say yes, not mainly, but just because it helps Florida State out in the future. Jaluis's brother is actually a 5-star linebacker in the 2025 class, Zayden Walker, and he joined him on the official visit this past weekend and really got to go through the experience right alongside Jalewis, even down to the point of, trying on uniforms together and going through the photo shoot, having Mike Norvell there. So I think getting him, it helps Florida State now, and it also helps maybe in that 2025 class of potentially bringing in a 5-star linebacker.
Nothing better than a good old 5-star linebacker. You can go and sign me up, catches my attention right away. Would be nice. Would be very, very nice. So does that wrap up? Does that officially wrap up official visit weekend?
I think that wraps it up. I just want to harp on Ricky Knight committing on July 1st this Saturday, and James Madison, Elijah Moore, both expected to announce their decisions on Tuesday, July 4th.
So we got a busy early July, baby. I know some fans were question marking, after Florida grabbed a whole ton of a commits. Of course, it happened in a 48 hour span, Florida and Billy Napier loading up on some commits. So started seeing Twitter and FSU Twitter see some crumbling as they are. And, there's no football games being played right now. There's absolutely nothing, no sports right now. So right now it's perfect time for FSU Twitter to spaz out and freak themselves out. But I think Florida State fans should be pretty happy with how July will begin and also how it may end. So,
and if you look at it, logically, which I know that's kind of hard to do for some Florida State fans.
Come on now. Yeah.
Florida is coming off a non-bowl eligible season under Billy Napier, already kind of building some fire there on the hot seat in Gainesville. It's really important for him to gain some positive momentum, some positive news right now in the offseason before the season starts and it all goes off the rails again. Whereas Florida State, you're coming off a 10-win season, been a lot more successful as of late. I don't think that they're necessarily pushing as hard to lock these guys down whenever they're in Tallahassee. They want them to go through the process, make the decision, and commit to Florida State. And I think that's going to pay off in July at least 5 times.
5 times.
At least 5.
Oh, at least.
Maybe
Okay. Oh, keeping us on our toes over here. Let's do it. Sign me up. Let's go. Well, that's good. That was a crazy busy weekend overall. And you, Tommy,
crazy busy month.
Yeah, no joke. Well, I'm about to jump backwards now because we weren't available. And we're just only going to touch on a few players here that need to be talked about and discussed for sure for our listeners. But let's talk about Jeremiah Smith. This is the number 1 wide receiver in the 2024 class, one of the top athletes, one of the top recruits in his class as well, and is a current Ohio State wide receiver commit. Ohio State always continues to push out product into the NFL. There's no debate about that. But Florida State trying to make a little push here. There was some chatter before he even arrived that, he was going to go bounce around and visit a few schools. He also visited Georgia as well. But, that visit went and been had. I just kind of want to just keep it straight up. Is Florida State even does it make sense? I mean, obviously Florida State would love to add this talent, but when you're going against his commitment to Ohio State and, you see him also being kind of a bell cow for his class, but then he goes off and goes across the country and visits Florida State. It's a little interesting to me. Florida State, they've been in the mix for a lot of these guys before, but it ends up not going in their way. But if you kind of were to mix in a nice season ahead, if Florida State's able to do what I think are expecting them to do, that definitely turns some heads a little bit and keeps the eye on your program a little bit more for a guy like Jeremiah Smith with his talent, man. It's watching that tape. It's fun.
I don't think you ever give up on a top 5 prospect because you just never know what's going to happen in these recruitments, especially when you're talking about a guy who's continuing to take visits, been in Tallahassee now for the unofficial visit, the multi-day unofficial visit that started on June 19th, went to the late hours of June 20th. Second trip to Tallahassee since March. So, this is a guy who's returning to Tallahassee. Sounds like he's going to end up potentially taking an official visit to Florida State during that game against Miami in November. He's already used his official visit to Ohio State. He went to Florida on an official visit at the beginning of the month. I'm not sure if he made it to Miami this past weekend, but you're talking about being one of, 3, 4, 5 schools that might end up getting him for an official visit during his recruitment. You're going to do it late in the recruiting cycle. You're going to do it against a team where you're talking about a guy who's from around that Miami area. He's going to get to watch FSU play against a team that he grew up, watching and is also still considering. So I think Florida State, you've got to keep trying here. I don't think, you're pulling out all the stops in this recruitment, but you're going to continue to give yourselves a chance. And I think I mentioned it the last time we were on here or so, but you never know about Ohio State. Ryan Day, this might be his last year in Columbus if they don't beat Michigan again. And he's also someone that's flirted with jobs at the NFL level in the past. At the very least, it seems like he's not going to be at Ohio State for the entirety of his coaching career. He's still someone that's looking around and exploring his options. And then same thing with Brian Hartline, a rising coach in college football. Now, you do have to consider if Ryan Day was to move on somewhere, would Brian Hartline be the head coach at Ohio State? I think it's a possibility. I don't know that it's a definite thing that you can say. And I think that's one reason that Jeremiah Smith is continuing to look around, just making sure he has his options in the case that Day leaves Ohio State, Brian Hartline leaves Ohio State, just to make sure. And, we saw the same thing with Travis Hunter. It looked like he was so locked into Florida State towards the end of his recruiting process, and then he took one visit, and it all changed.
You can't say that name here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What name was it?
Hunter Travis.
Yeah, there you go.
Hunter Travis. No, yeah. We'll see. I don't know. I think it's just great for Florida State putting themselves in this position. Like you're saying, just put yourself there. Never know what could happen once we get through the rest of the season, get through middle of the season. You never know where we could get when it comes to signing day. So Florida State doing that with a lot of targets, some of the top targets in the country, putting themselves and building relationships. I think that was probably one of the biggest things they wanted to get him here for. Just start really continuously building those relationships. And the donk ain't leaving. Dunk ain't leaving. So it's parked. It's full of gas. It's ready to go. So we'll see if Florida State is able to continue that recruitment and, try to make a potential flip there. But that's a really talented player that Florida State would love to have on in their stable of, we talked about earlier, that wide receiver room. It's absolutely stupidly stacked at the moment. But we'll keep an eye on that recruitment. Before we talk about Charles Lester, if you guys are on YouTube right now, we got almost 150 on here as we speak. Make sure you hit that like button. This goes out to more FSU fans, and they can come over here and jump over to our YouTube live videos. We do this every Wednesday at 7 p.m., and it will continue going into the season. And once we get to games, we will have previews for you guys every weeknight on Wednesday nights, and then we will do a recap, instant reactions after the game. Sometimes we'll be in attendance for those as well, right on the field, give you guys our thoughts. So we got tons of content left and right coming to you guys, but you just hitting the like button tonight helps a ton. And you don't even have to subscribe. Definitely would love for you to comment and stuff, but if you just smack that like button, it would be deeply appreciated. Let's talk Charles Lester, big time Florida State 5-star target cornerback. Would love to add on a talented cornerback. It's been, kind of a minute since they've had something of this caliber and magnitude of talent on their team. But going to Charles Lester, a guy that's visited 9 times to FSU, continues to kind of almost be like a hidden bell cow in some sort of way, always showing some respect and love for Mike Norvell on Twitter, backing up the Florida State Seminoles in some arguments I've seen on Twitter as well. You would think this guy is already in the fold, but, nonetheless, Florida State's in a great spot for Lester. He just had his recent visit, not this last weekend, but 2 weekends ago. How'd that go? And, now we have a commitment date, Dustin. It's going to be on July 29th, the end of the month of next month.
Yeah, I think based off him setting the commitment date, you've got to say that the visit went pretty well. I think Florida State, they kind of checked off all the boxes here. Lester was able to come alongside his family, spend some more time building that bond with Patrick Surtain. That's still a relatively new relationship there, but it sounds like even though they've only been talking, for 6 months or so, they've really started to develop a close connection with one another. And Lester is excited about the possibility of playing under him in college. Same thing with Mike Norvell. I think that's a huge reason why Florida State is at the forefront of this recruitment. And, I said earlier this month, I think FSU is going to end up landing this commitment from Charles Lester. And now that we actually have our date, we're only about a month away or so from hopefully officially getting him into the fold for the 2024 class. But, like I said, I think the trip went really well. And that's even just enhanced by the fact that he didn't end up taking that final official visit he had scheduled to Georgia. Instead, he took an unofficial visit to Michigan State, who, I don't consider a major player in his recruitment at this time. So, I do have Florida State as the favorite here. I've had them as the favorite for a while, I would say. And, we've even heard Charles Lester in the past, back during that visit in the spring when he was here for the I think it was the FSU Legacy Weekend or one of those spring practices. He basically said, he's like, I've been committed to Florida State, but I haven't been committed. So, I think this is basically as silent as a commitment as you're going to get. And we will see if it all pays off in July. But I think Florida State is going to land him, and it's going to be a really nice addition to this 2024 class. And he's someone that a lot of elite prospects are going to want to play with. And, he's going to do his part on the recruiting trail alongside some of these other guys like Luke Kromenhoek and Cam Davis, Camden Fryer. We even Landon Thomas, this past weekend getting involved. He's going to do his part alongside those guys to try and build something special at Florida State.
There's some great shots that Charles took with Mike Norvell. Just sitting there pondering. There's Coach Surtain. But yeah, I think Florida State's don't really need to say more. You know what I love too is watching Mike Norvell rock Robert Scott's custom shoes that he made for him. Check these out. It's kind of hard to see, I think, on the live stream. But Robert Scott, I don't know if we touched on it on the podcast yet, but Robert Scott hooked it up and made some custom Nikes. What are those? VZ?
Air Forces.
Air Forces.
You know what an Air Force is.
I do. I'm just making sure. I didn't want to look stupid. I'd be over here saying friggin' Kobe Bryant 66 XL. I don't know. I could be over here screwing up big time.
And for the record, Lester has changed that date to Friday, July 28th for his announcement.
Okay. He's switching up on us left and right here, but it's going to be at the end of the month, which is good. But yeah, here's he and Mike Norvell also wearing the shirt there.
Wild.
I think that's his mom.
There's a family tie to this shirt.
I think that's his mom on the shirt.
I think there's a tie. There might be even deeper than that. I don't know. Maybe someone in the comments can let us know. 'Cause I saw something in Discord. Someone was talking about it. But yeah, really cool stuff here. You know, it just seems like it's just waiting on it to happen type of deal at the moment. And we got to wait a month, literally a month from now. We'll be waiting for that commitment. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But that is a really talented cornerback that Florida State could be adding to their arsenal, which is needed, you know. And it's much needed for sure, but to have that kind of caliber talent is huge. And that's what makes, strengthens the whole Florida State DBU argument. But yeah, Florida State's been on him and for a while, and that relationship has been built, and it's time to happen. But it'll be great to have him there, because then you add it on, recruiting with your bell cows, man. It's huge, and trying to finish off the class, but looking forward to covering that one at the end of the month. One last one, though, I want to bring up here, D-Lou, to you as the number one safety in the 2024 class. This is KJ Bolden, who also, seems to be continuing to build a nice relationship with Florida State staff and getting to know Coach Surtain now in his first season as being Florida State's defensive back coach. But he actually had a few days in Tallahassee, got to talk with him as well. How do you think that went, and any kind of takeaways that stand out to you?
Yeah, I would say similar to Jeremiah Smith, it just kind of stands out to me that these guys continue to make their way back to Tallahassee. Even for this one, for Bolden, this wasn't an official visit. This was a multi-day unofficial. So, I mean, to come to Tallahassee on his own dime for multiple days to visit Florida State, in my opinion, that kind of says a lot. It says that he's still looking at them as a legitimate option. There's a guy who was also at Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and Auburn on official visits during the month of June. Coming out of this trip to FSU, it sounds like he's going to take an official visit to Tallahassee. That one going to occur probably for the Miami rivalry game. Sounds like Florida State, they're really trying to make that probably the big weekend as far as the fall during the season. KJ Bolden actually said that Cam Davis and Landon Thomas, two guys that are also from the Peach State, have been reaching out and trying to get him to join him in this 2024 class in Tallahassee. Those guys continuing to do their part on the recruiting trail. Once again, it sounds like this is another elite defensive back who has clicked with Patrick Surtain and Mike Norvell. And I think, this is another one. Just got to continue to stay the course, get him in for that official visit. He is probably going to announce a decision this summer, and I wouldn't expect Florida State to be the pick there, but if they do get him in for that official late in the season, they're going to have a shot to make the flip. And right now, I think he's probably going to commit to either Alabama or Georgia. But I mean, these things, they're never done until these guys sign on the dotted line, especially when you're talking about a top 5, top 10 prospect. These NIL deals, stuff like that. It gets crazy whenever you start getting towards that December early signing period. And, we'll see with Jeremiah Smith and KJ Bolden, but Florida State right there in the thick of things for both of them.
Yeah. Definitely. If you're able to get Lester in the fold at the end of July, start picking up some steam there and use your bell cows to your best advantage, man. Why not? But it ain't over till the end. That's what I've learned now. Definitely with NIL being added and Florida State being in the mix of because of their product on the field, I'm not counting them out. And anything, anywhere, transfer portal, high school recruiting, there's some ways that Florida State can make some waves. So we'll see what ends up happening there with Bolden, but really talented safety that just like I was saying earlier, cornerback's great, with Lester, but safety is a major need for FSU as well, too.
You never know. And Bolden is a guy that grew up a Florida State fan, and even mentioned in the interview, he said he was saying "we" when he was talking about Florida State. Being a guy that really grew up a fan of them, and saying that he hopes they make the playoffs and win the national championship this year. So some more success on the field, nice little NIL deal. We'll see what happens. Florida State, they're having plenty of success in Georgia. I wouldn't count them out for KJ Bolden.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up the entire recruiting segment of the show, which was an hour and literally 4 minutes. But that's all she wrote. Now Florida State goes into a dry period, correct, Dustin, in July?
Yep. Got a dead period until towards the end of July. It sounds like Florida State is going to host one final recruiting event this summer on that Saturday, July 29th. Like we said, Charles Lester going to commit July 28th. So we'll see if Florida State goes out into that Saturday with some good news.
Let's jump into Dalvin Cook, because that's a highly discussed thing right now. One of the top free agent. He probably is a top free agent right now, available on the NFL market. A lot of teams pushing and vying to get his talents on the roster, but it was reported earlier today that the Dolphins had made an offer to him. But I just found now Dalvin Cook just shot that down, or at least he said that he has declined a visit to the Miami Dolphins.
Ooh.
Which is really interesting to me. That needs to be, we got to cover that tomorrow. But good to know that. I'm glad I Googled that, because I was about to go on a whole spill about Miami. I mean, not saying that completely shoots down, Dalvin to Miami. He's got strong ties there, and, the Dolphins would love to utilize him with the talent, Tyreek Hill, and what they've already got there with Tua and making some strides on offense. But he said he declined the visit to the Dolphins. I think right now, to me,
not technically. If you keep digging, it says the visit that Dalvin Cook suggested he declined was not the Dolphins. Both sides have interest. So
who did he decline?
Yeah,
who's he declining?
Yeah, now the question is, who did he decline? Hopefully it was the Jets, because I can't.
The other one was the Jets, right?
Rodgers. So,
I'd like to see him with the Jets.
We have to watch that video for us, Logan, but I don't know.
Yeah. This one's, I'm keeping a close eye. I got the alerts on for his stories, posts, everything. We're keeping a close eye. He did a little workout today. He's getting his 1% in. I don't know. I think Broncos, Jets, Miami.
I think the thing with Dalvin is he's still searching for that top running back type of money, but he's just not going to get it. I mean, that's just kind of where we're at right now. We're seeing the running back position continue to decrease in value. I know Dalvin Austin, he's going to get about $2 million or so from the Vikings for the season. So, I mean, that could help another club kind of supplement there, but it seems like as far as what he's demanding, no one's met that number as of right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of deal he gets. I'm kind of expecting like a 2-year, $12 million kind of deal, with the second year being not as fully guaranteed in case the team needs to get out of it, or if he wants to use it as a proof of deal and go somewhere else, he can do that as well. I like the teams you mentioned. Miami and Denver both make a lot of sense. Seeing him in that Sean Payton offense in Denver next to Russell Wilson would be pretty fun, especially having another young back next to him in Javonte Williams. I think that'd be a ton of fun to watch, but it would be weird to see him wearing orange.
Ew. Yeah, no, I don't think he likes wearing orange as well.
And I will say, in like some random Madden franchise simulations I've done, every time I've cut Dalvin, he's gone to Chicago. It's happened like 4 times now, which makes absolutely no sense. I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Why were you cutting him though?
Just like, just a realistic thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you said you did it 4 times, so.
Yeah, I get bored pretty easily.
Yeah, Dolphins still with some of the top odds. Broncos, Jets, Bills. That'd be pretty fun with his brother.
I think he still ends up in Miami. I think it might take him a little bit to realize they're not going to get to that number that he wants, but at the same time, you get to go home. You get to play on a team that's, playoff bound, in my opinion, as long as Tua can stay healthy. That has made some serious additions on the defensive side with Jalen coming in. Get to reunite with him. It just makes too much sense for him to go to Miami.
He's still a good running back. He's going to want to go somewhere that he can win and still play a lot. Though that clip insinuating that Justin Jefferson was good because of him was insane. It was one of the most outlandish takes I've ever seen.
Did he say that?
No, that same guy that said he declined a visit from Miami said, yeah, he made Justin Jefferson good. I was like, okay, that's a wild statement.
All right.
Like I love Dalvin as much as anybody, but that's a little insane.
I'm looking at an interview with Zach Hiller, who is Dalvin Cook's agent, and he's talking about, he wants to go to a win now. Team wants to get to a Super Bowl very soon, but said that, just coming out of this interview, it seems like it's not all dialed in on him wanting to stay at home and play for Miami. They actually mentioned Florida State in here, saying, he could have gone to Miami there, but ended up going and playing at FSU. So not everything is riding on being back home, and quote, he'd be fine with traveling and playing out of the state of Florida. So
for sure,
that's going to come down to money anyways. But
if you're talking about the Jets, Broncos, and Dolphins, I think Dolphins are going to be the best in this upcoming season.
Whoa.
I don't know about that.
I think the Jets are going to make a stride.
I think they're going to be better with Aaron Rodgers there, of course, but
he'd get more opportunities with Miami.
I think the Jets will make some strides.
Yeah,
Jermaine Johnson, second year.
Does he want to split carries with Breece Hall? Whereas Miami, he's probably the primary guy.
Yeah, he'd still have to split a little bit with Kane and Jeff Wilson, but definitely not as much as Hall.
And I'm not convinced Denver's going to be – they'll be better, but I don't think they're going to be some crazy flip around to the playoffs.
Is there quarterback Bridgewater?
It's Russell Wilson.
No, dude, it's Russell Wilson.
Oh, it's Russell Wilson.
As I said like 3 minutes ago.
He was terrible last year.
And he was bad. It was really bad.
It was awful. Bad. Yeah, the Jets, they're expecting, they're all talk and chatter because of Aaron Rodgers being there, and then you got some of their players there saying that, this feels like Tom Brady in 2020. We're fine now. We're good. But, they're going to have to.
The Jets are a team that's going to go 12-5 and lose in the first round of the playoffs. It's just how Aaron Rodgers' career is gone.
You think they'll win 12?
They're going to win more than they should, just because it's Aaron Rodgers, and then they'll lose first round of the playoffs. It's one of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their division holds Buffalo Bills, Patriots, and Dolphins in there. So interested. Keep an eye on what's going on there with Dalvin. Anything basketball-wise? I know we talked in the production meeting, VZ, about some Baba stuff as well, and he's playing and competing right now. But also ACC versus SEC challenge game announced with Georgia. Yeah. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, we've actually got a couple things, even something that came up, or something I remember while we're in the middle of the podcast. But let's start with Georgia. The inaugural ACC SEC challenge was announced today, and Florida State will be playing one of their neighbors in the University of Georgia Bulldogs. It's a really interesting matchup for as close as these two teams are geographically. They haven't played since 1981, which is kind of absurd, and really only twice since the 60s. It's crazy to think about. They have the Hugh Durham connection, who led both schools to their one and only Final Four appearances, 1972 for Florida State and 83 for Georgia. You have a VCU transfer on each team. You have Jameer Watkins at Florida State, and you have the brother of Kalen DeLoach at Georgia in Jalen DeLoach. It's going to be an interesting game, and obviously Georgia's coached by our former friend Mike White, who was at Florida, and Florida State just beat up on for almost his entire tenure there. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Both teams are hoping to improve from where they were last season. Georgia was a 500 team at 16-16, and obviously Florida State was bad. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I think it's the perfect game for this. I think obviously the biggest storyline would have been being able to play Missouri, but this feels a little bit more on their playing field.
And it's in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Dustin, I won't be there with you though, but you're going.
I am. All right.
Yeah, you're going. I was gonna say I'll see you there, Dustin, but I don't think I'll be there for that.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday night at like 9:15.
Yeah, I don't. We'll be on here. We got work to do, people. We'll be on here.
I'm getting
Wait,
too old.
what date is that?
It's the 20. Hold on,
29th,
something like that.
I think it's after UF week for football.
Yeah, it's after Thanksgiving.
So
okay.
Yeah, November 29th.
So we'll be previewing an ACC championship, right? For football,
probably,
maybe, hopefully,
potentially.
Hopefully, maybe we'll be in Charlotte by
Let's
then.
Let's take it day by day.
Okay, day by day. All right, gotcha. I'm just making sure. But yeah, VZ, look, that's fun. 2 big time programs like that going against each other. Sign me up.
Well, 2 big time brands.
Yeah,
I don't know about
not
teams.
basketball.
Well,
yeah.
I was trying to word it right earlier in the tweet.
2 big logos. How about that?
Yeah, two huge brands that, someone will look at the TV and think it's football and go, "Ooh, that's interesting," and then they'll click it and realize it's a very bad basketball game and click off.
Whoa, come on now! I told you I'm fully balled into basketball right now. I'm back like I never left.
Well, let me pull you right back down.
Okay,
Because
sounds good.
earlier in the week, Darren Green posted on his Instagram story of him in a knee brace that caused a little rowdiness. Apparently, it was just a cleanup for something real basic. Yeah, just an arthroscopic scope. He should be fine by the regular season, but I know a few people were a little concerned about it.
Now,
that is kind of concerning because that's like one of your best players.
Yeah.
Hopefully, just a little scopey scope.
Your top shooter, your leading returning scorer. Yeah,
had enough guys, FSU basketball wise, dealing with knee injuries the last year or so. Too many.
It's like the plague in Tallahassee. Knee injuries.
Jesus, no joke.
It's wild, dude.
But yeah, on a brighter note, Baba Miller's been playing for Spain's national team in the FIBA U19 tournament and has been playing pretty solid, averaging 8 points, 6 rebounds, about 2 assists. But he kind of blew up, a few games ago when he shot 4 of 5 from 3 to go for 14 points and then followed it up with a 9, 12, and 10, 9, 10, and 7.
7 what?
7 assists.
Okay.
Yeah, 9 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. Really solid game from him. He's looking much smoother, much more fluid as an athlete, much in better shape. His shot is still slow, but it's a lot more streamlined. Definitely looks like he's made some progress there, and it's good to see him get some action against, better talent than he's going to play in college, arguably. And I think they were just in the round of 16 and dominated Lebanon. He was plus 35 in 14 minutes, just to put it in comparison. But he's been playing pretty well, and we'll see if he can keep it up for these last couple of games because Spain's one of the better teams in the tournament.
It's got to be big for him. I know he struggled a little bit to stay in shape coming off that 16-game bullshit suspension from the NCAA. Hopefully nothing fishy happens this time whenever he flies back to the United States. Can we just keep him on the court for 30 games this season? I know we gave the kid some flack on the show last year during the season, but it's especially tough for a guy to come over from Europe and then be suspended for 16 games and then have to finally start his true freshman season in college basketball. And it wasn't last season. Normally one of the top conferences in the country. It's just tough to come in, sit out 16 straight games, and bang, you've got to hop into your toughest competition of the entire season. So, I really think, Baba, he does have a ton of potential. And if he's able to realize that, that could be a major turnaround for Florida State.
And he was dealing with injuries as soon as he got to campus last year. He had those shin splints pretty much as soon as he got to Tallahassee. And that's not something easy to deal with. That's something that you really got to let heal before you can go back out there and play. So, hopefully he can continue being in this good condition because that's something a few people told me last year at the NBA levels. He's got to get in better shape, and he looks in much better shape so far this summer.
That's great to hear. Good for Baba. Anything else, gentlemen? Anything else? I don't think there's much more. Now with recruiting, that's going to continue, and Florida State's going to have a pretty busy, hopefully, fingers crossed, early month to it. So we'll have some good stuff to talk about on the podcast, but we'll continue to try to reach out and grab some guests on here. Would love to get, if you guys ever, suggest us some stuff, comment if you want some current players that are on the roster, or maybe a coach to come on here and discuss. We'd love to have Tony Tokars on here. And we've also had a few current players on the roster come up. But if you guys have any suggestions, it helps us be able to just shoot an email over to Florida State and maybe get a chance of bringing one of these guys on. They always turn out to be phenomenal interviews, and it's the time to do it before the season kicks in and availability goes down. So, we're heading into July, gentlemen. That means you could say 2 months, but it's really gonna be like 3 months. But we're getting close to September. We're getting close. Dustin, do you remember what date fall camp began on last year? I've been trying to figure that out.
July.
I have to go through my emails here.
20-something.
Well, if we're doing math, it's probably going to be after ACC kickoff, which is the 25th or 27th.
Wednesday, July 27th was the first day last year.
July 27th?
But that was also a week 0 game, so I'm projecting to start a week later, first week of August. Because right now the kickoff, like Austin was saying, FSU is on the 27th.
6th. They're on the 26th.
FSU is on the 26th. It goes to the 27th, which is that Thursday. So you would think that following Monday they probably start, or maybe they wait till Wednesday again like they did here.
Like August 2nd?
It's August 2nd and Monday.
No, that'd be the Wednesday.
Yeah, so I'd say either July 31st to August 2nd. One of those 3 days it'll start.
Okay. I would love for it to be August 2nd because the Bucks, they don't have a training camp that day, but then of course they do the next 2 days. But definitely looking forward to at least getting up there for the beginning of fall camp and seeing what's going on. A lot of players, some newcomers too that we haven't seen in action with our own eyes yet. So, I'm starting to itch a little bit. Whenever that grass outside is, freshly cut grass and you smell it, football's on the way. It's already hot as a mofo right now. Humidity's here. It's just like, give me that, but I need some football with it, and we're cooking. So, but yeah, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Appreciate y'all. Sorry for not having an episode last week. We're back though, nonstop. Appreciate you guys as always. I know a lot of y'all. Yeah, until next week. Yeah, it doesn't stop until next week. Make sure you hit the like button too. We have 65 likes. That's a lot. That's been quite a bit for.
Let's get that to 69.
Yeah, can we get to 69 likes? There's got to be a way, right? There's got to be a way. But appreciate y'all. Over 100 watching on YouTube, quite a bit on Facebook, and I know always our audio listeners hanging out with us. But appreciate y'all. You can find this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. We're on every podcast platform available. Make sure you're following us on Facebook. We just hit 100,000 followers on there. To shout out to all of our Facebook people. Twitter's rolling right now. We got a lot of Instagram content coming y'all's way as well. So just kind of gearing up, testing a few things here left and right before this 2023 season comes. And we're getting prepped on every angle imaginable. So appreciate y'all. Have a great rest of y'all's week. And we'll see you guys next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Peace. Not the silk word, 17.5, same color t-shirt.